Hey Pilates teachers, it's Linda Lippin here from Linda Lippin Pilates, Pilates Teacher Mastermind VIP, Pilates Profit Lab. I basically just want to talk a little bit today about a topic that I bring up every once in a while, but I'm feeling the need to talk about it this week because I'm seeing the phrase neutral spine come up a lot in the continuing education exams for my e-courses. And it's kind of funny because in all of my e-courses, I talk about how much I dislike the phrase neutral spine because I feel like it is a false concept. So I get that the idea of a neutral spine is a spine that has its natural curves, but know that for one, that's going to look completely different on every human being. And number two, for some clients, like for some of my clients with scoliosis, their natural curves are actually something that we're trying to work with and work around and strengthen them in different ways. So it's not always that the curve that the person has as their neutral is something that you want to maintain. It's also a fact that I've seen clients where they've been so focused on neutral spine that they've actually been trying to do things like roll up and roll over without rolling through their spines so much. And if you're going into exercises that require a deep spinal flexion, you have to really be willing to lengthen that spine and move it within that flexion. And if a person's not capable of doing that, they shouldn't be doing that exercise or should be doing something modified and not just try to hold a kind of artificially arched lower back position through flexion, because again, that's not going to work. I feel like we need to recognize that the human spine is basically always in motion. As long as we're breathing, which we are all the time while we're alive, our spines are moving because our rib cage is attached to our spine. The entire thoracic spine is attached to ribs. Your diaphragm is there, and every time you breathe, there's movement, okay? Your lower back moves as well, and your pelvis, because every time you breathe, there's changes within your pelvic floor muscles that affect things too. So realistically, there's no static neutral spine position. Our spines are always moving, but there are some things we can look at. Now, what I like to talk about with my clients or focus on is I'll focus on kind of 3 points. I'll say to them, I would like you to be heavy in the very back of your skull, right? Not your neck, not necessarily chin to chest, but if you're lying on your back, I want the back of your skull to be heavy. And then I would like a tiny bit of heaviness if you're on your back in your shoulder blades, just kind of across the collarbones, back of armpit, a little bit heavy into the mat for just a little bit of anchor back there. And then I like to see a heavy sacrum and heavy hip bones. And that basically ensures a relatively neutral pelvis. Now, neutral pelvis is more of a defined term. Neutral pelvis is when the hip bones and the pubic bones are in the same horizontal plane, okay? That is the neutral pelvis. Then you can have a posterior pelvic tilt when the hip bones drop down towards the rib cage or down towards the floor or towards the spine, and the pubic bone goes up, sending the spine into a little bit of flexion. And then you can have an anterior pelvic tilt where the hip bones go in front of the pubic bones, and then you're looking at a lordotic spine or a little too much arch in that lower back. So, finding a neutral pelvis can be useful for folks, and that's probably as close as most folks are going to get to a sense of a neutral spine. But at least, finding those 3 points of the spine and then just working on breathing and kind of moving from that position is something tangible that people can actually feel and use. The concept of being in natural spine curves, especially if your spine has some not great curves to begin with, which is the case for a lot of folks, that the concept is kind of useless and can be ultimately confusing, and I found at times harmful. Whereas talking about a neutral pelvis and then kind of looking at how the spine lays from there and working with and around that tends to work better for most people. So there you have it. That's why I really believe that neutral spine is a total myth. I don't know anyone who's actually found it yet. I'm going to leave you with that. So have a great rest of your day.